Thanks for joining me today. For those of you new to the channel, my name is Mike and you're watching At Home in Wild Spaces. A couple months ago, over 20,000 of you watched a video I made discussing the remarkable story of Shayne Burke, an Army veteran recently recovered from brain surgery who was attacked by a grizzly while on his honeymoon. You just can't make this stuff up. But you know who else watched my video discussing Shayne Burke's story? Shayne Burke.
I don't know if you want this to be on the video, but I just wanted to thank you just for doing your research before making a video. Because there's so much speculation going around and it was just like so disheartening. One of the things that I was thinking about was what's going to happen to this animal, because I don't want anything bad to happen to this animal that's just acting in its most primal headspace.
Over the past couple months, I've had the pleasure of chatting with Shayne and his wife, Chloe, about their experience and the harmful falsehoods that exploded across the internet in the wake of Shayne's attack. Today, we're going to set the record straight and discuss why the internet has made it so difficult for people to find reliable information regarding bear safety. Now, we admittedly had some technical difficulties during our last recording session and an issue or two during today's attempt, but I hope that you'll be able to look past the relative lack of polish in the video editing process and recognize the critical value of today's discussion.
Initially, we were hesitant to talk about the attack at all. We weren't really interested in sharing the story too widely, but as more and more time went by and the news got out, even though Shayne's identity wasn't revealed yet, we started to realize that there was a lot of misinformation being spread. Yeah. And it was starting to get very frustrating. And we kind of realized, oh, if we don't share our story, people might not be able to learn from this. And any educational value that could have come out of something horrible happening during our honeymoon is gone. It's for nothing. So
that's exactly kind of my frustration too, is that, the truth is always at a disadvantage, it seems, right?
Right.
There's this great quote from Mark Twain that says that a lie can travel halfway around the world before the truth has gotten its boots on. And in the internet age, that is more true than Mark Twain ever imagined, right?
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And so I love it when people who have been through this, there's trauma involved with it. It's there's so much going on when something like this happens to you. And so I don't begrudge you at all for being like, oh man, I don't know that we want to talk about this, but I'm really appreciative that you guys have gotten to that point or gotten to the place where you're like, no, if the true lessons from our experience are going to be known, we have to talk about it. And I appreciate you guys being willing to have that conversation. Shayne, Chloe, help everybody get kind of a feel for who you guys are and how you ended up in Grand Teton on your honeymoon.
Chloe and I got married back in 2022. It was a hasty wedding because I found out I had a brain tumor. We met each other through the love of the outdoors, mostly rock climbing. But as we grew as a couple, I started to take her out in the woods and we just experienced the woods together. And she developed a love for it as well. We both love spectating wildlife. Essentially, after we got married, I had brain surgery. So we couldn't go on a honeymoon just because we both were having some health issues and I needed to really heal and be 100%. She wanted to be 100%. And our bank account needed to be at a better place. So we saved money and we started to slowly plan this trip out west, which for us, like, she lived in a van for a little while, and she really loves being on the road, and as do I. And we never have really got to experience that together. So it was really important for us to just take as much time off of work as we could, use this time as our honeymoon slash just reacquaint ourselves with the outdoors and life as we know it. And so we hit the road, traveled out to Ohio first, then South Dakota. We stayed in the Badlands for 3 days, 2 nights, and that was awesome. I love the Badlands, one of my favorite national parks. It was her first time, and I just remember, like, as she was driving into the park, and I just remember, like, seeing her smiling ear to ear, and just she's a rock nerd, so she's just all the geology was she was just in heaven. Um, we had a couple days in random places in Wyoming, Buffalo, Wyoming, and Cody, Wyoming, and then from there we went to Yellowstone. We made reservations. We got like literally the last campsite in the park, which was awesome.
To add to the logistical issues, we brought our beloved dog
Oh
with
yeah,
us. So, there were some areas that were kind of off limits, and it was, I
yeah,
don't know, it was kind of fun trying to come up with an itinerary that would work for all three of us.
yeah,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I
different
gotta
from other
tell you,
travel that I've done.
yeah, I gotta tell you, the first time my wife and I, well, that's not one of the first times my wife and I went to Yellowstone as a couple. We also had our dog, so yeah,
yes.
it's a different experience. But yeah,
Hmm.
Yeah, not as much like backcountry hiking and stuff as I thought,
Yeah.
was going to happen, but at the same time, just seeing the joy that it brings to our dog, having her with us, it was just priceless.
And we were still doing some backcountry stuff
Outside
just
park.
outside of the parks. Like we were in Bighorn Fort National Forest. We just planned on hitting the national forest on our way back to our next destination. In Yellowstone, we saw a lot of cool stuff. Saw the bears. Like I had my fill of the bears, but I just didn't get my fill of the great gray owls. We did a little bit of internet research and figured out that it's possible to see them on Signal Mountain. Drove south from Yellowstone, drove right into the Tetons, which was just supposed to be a stop for us. We weren't staying there. We were actually going to continue driving, just spend a few hours in Tetons. Because we had the dog, we had to stay on the road. So we just were like, oh, we're just going to walk right up Signal Mountain Road and hopefully we see a good gray owl near the road. And I kind of was like, well, just in case, I might just go off by myself for an hour if we don't see something when you're satisfied with your walk. So we walked the dog up the hill for about half a mile, maybe three-quarters of a mile. Chloe had her bear spray. I had my bear spray. I had a small backpack with just a lens and a water bottle in it. My fanny pack with my phone, stuff like that, and then my bino harness, which had my bear spray horizontally underneath it. Chloe decided that she wanted to make sure Caden's got some water and stuff, so she turned around, went back down the hill, and I continued on. Um, I went off the road to the left of the road if you're going up the hill, and I just zigzagged through that area, stayed on a game trail for the most part. As I went up, um, I got to the human trail. So I crossed the road from the human trail. I saw probably a dozen mountain bikers going up the hill. I saw a number of people up there. So I just started to develop this like false sense of security. Like, yeah, there's nothing dangerous up here. Like I'm good. I walked up the human trail or Signal Mountain trailhead. Ironically, that was the only place I saw any bear sign. It was probably like 2 to 3 week old grizzly bear poop. And at that point, I was like, okay, we're not alone up here. Like, there's wild animals up here, you know. I'm still kind of just looking to the trees, trying to spot a great gray. I might have seen one, but it was really, really far away. It was a pretty big bird, and it just took off as soon as I got past its threshold of wanting me around it. And at that point, about an hour had lapsed, and I was like, okay, it's time to go back to the car. I know Chloe's gonna be worried, and I always do this to her where I say I'll be back in an hour and I'm back in three. And I had to remind myself that it was our honeymoon and I needed to get back to the car. I had a choice to make. Was I gonna take the longer route, which would be, walking to the road and then walking down the road, or would I just beeline it through here, still maybe get a chance to see some wildlife and photograph, hopefully an owl still? And so I chose the latter. I started walking through the woods, going downhill. Really good great gray owl habitat from what I've read. Swampy, sometimes like open fields and stuff like that. At this point, I'm walking through this valley, and I've got Signal Mountain to my right, and there's just this big incline of the hill blocking my view of what's ahead of me. As I navigate around this hill, portion of the hill, I see the cub running away. And my instant thought was like, ooh, that's a small grizzly bear, probably a cub. I pulled my bear spray out. I looked down on it to pop the safety off, and then I looked up, and mom was less than 10 feet away and just crashing through the woods, just ready to pummel me.
Yeah.
And
If we could, for a moment, what does that look like? I mean,
oh man,
even for me, I have seen hundreds of bears, tons of grizzlies, but I've never had one charging directly at me.
yeah,
So, I mean, what does that look like?
I mean, it looks like, I mean, like, just lack of better terms, it just looked like a freight train was just coming right at me. And I knew, like, all these micro thoughts are, processing through my head, and I knew I was in trouble. I knew I was going to get hurt.
Yeah.
And I wasn't sure if I was going to survive it. I can't describe what it looks like other than just like a rabid, angry, giant animal that has more than 200 pounds on me
Yeah.
crashing through the woods. Like, yeah, it sends shivers down my spine right now thinking about
Yeah. I can imagine. I mean, the moment of truth has now arrived. A bear is, bearing down on you, for lack of a better term.
it.
What kind of preparation had you done to this point?
I had been doing a lot of internet research prior to the trip. I was watching bear safety videos.
We had conversations before the trip even started about, you know, getting bear spray, whether or not we want to rent it out there or buy it somewhere out here and drive it out. Long drive from Massachusetts all the way out to grizzly country in Wyoming. Um, but not only did we make sure that we had one can of spray for each adult, but also, Shayne took a lot of interest in a lot of the signage around the park. I don't know if you want to talk about that.
So we had bought in the spray before we left for the trip. We were having trouble like getting it sent here, but I guess Cabela's in Boston ended up having some, so they sent it to us. And so I watched a video on YouTube. I don't remember what video it was, but the guy like takes the spray out and then uses his other hand to pop the safety off. So that's just like, I'm a muscle memory person. When I learn something, that's how I do it.
Mhm.
And unbeknownst to me, that it is astronomically easier to use just your thumb on the hand that it's
Yeah.
held in. So I guess I could have done a little more research on that and like maybe watch actual UDAP videos.
Mm.
Because their content's good, your content's great. So, I
You'd at least done it once before the trip, though. I just learned how
oh
to take the safety off yesterday.
yeah, I did,
Good thing it
I
wasn't
actively
me.
like practice it a little bit.
Mm.
Reading the signs in the park is like instrumental. Like, just
Yeah.
understanding, like, they lay it out for you perfectly, and you just gotta like take the time to heed their warnings. And I have no doubt in my mind, like, what saved my life was reacting the way I reacted, because I did read those signs,
Yeah.
and actually bringing the bear spray. And like, those are the two things that definitely saved my life. And it was something that I was generally like curious and worried about. I wasn't like afraid, but like, I think anyone who goes into bear country and isn't worried is just lying to themselves.
You've been attacked by a bear, so it's going to be strange hearing it, but it's not something you need to freak out about.
Right.
Um, you know, it's most likely not going to happen, but it is something you need to be thinking about.
Yeah.
So,
Once I realized, so I got the safety off and I saw that she was so close, that I don't know why, but I just opted to just go for the ground as opposed to spraying her. I think it was just more of a flight thing for me, is like
mm,
just try to make myself as non-threatening as possible. And so as I turned around and went for the ground and started to get in the position of putting my hands behind my neck, interlocked, and just, really trying to protect my arteries in my neck, she simultaneously tackles me, and that's when she connects. And that was just like, oh, it literally felt like getting hit by a truck. And
yeah.
then also putting my shoulder in a vice. And um so she took me to the ground. At this point, I just tried burying my face in the dirt, trying to muffle as much noise as I could. She came back over, stepped on me, and then just started ravaging my legs and just picking me up and throwing me by my legs. And um, the best thing, I just kept telling, like, I just gritted my teeth and was like, you just need to stay as stiff as possible. Don't, don't let her flip you over, and just don't make a noise. And I tried, man. And until you experience it, like, playing dead and being quiet are very, very challenging when you have a bear literally trying to kill you. And
Yeah.
the last bite in my right leg, she had me in the air, and she was just like biting me real hard and just slamming me like this on the ground. And she was picking me up high enough that, like, my elbows were still planted on the ground, but like my face and my chest was coming up. And I don't know what it was about that last bite, but it hurt so much more than the rest that I just let out like a blood curdling scream, and almost kind of like pleading with her to just kill me. Like, at this
Yeah.
point,
I
you
give
know,
up. I give up.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know? Yeah.
And yeah, and so she just like lets me go, just nonchalantly, just drops me on the ground. And then she stepped on my back, and I still have my hands interlocked. And she goes to bite down on my, either the back of my neck or my head, just that general area.
Yeah.
And she got my right hand pretty good, and my left wrist, but also bit into the bear spray can. That popped. That content released into her mouth, and then she started to run away. At that point, I looked at the direction she was running, and I decided to run in the opposite direction up the hill. I run up the hill. It's pretty steep. I know you ventured out there a little bit, so
Yeah.
you have some idea on what it's like. I was jumping over these down trees. I get up this hill, and I don't know why, but I was like, check your phone, see if you have service. Like, we need to get out of here. And so I had service, and so I connect with Chloe. I told her what happened. I was like, hey, it happened. I just got attacked by a grizzly bear. And she was just like, what? And I'm like, got attacked by a grizzly bear. And she's like, where's your first aid kit? And, she's reminding me of things that I have to do. But I was like, yeah, I like, you're right. I can still improvise some tourniquets and stuff. I need to get somewhere safe first. So I get to the top of this plateaued hill, and up there is where we hang up with each other. She calls 911, and I started to just get in triage mode and started to cut straps off of my backpack and my camera and everything, and started making some makeshift tourniquets.
He understood the assignment, but I remember saying, like, your gear's not more important than your life. Like, take it apart. Like, use what you have. And he did a really good job of stopping the bleeding, because even though he wasn't bleeding from any major arteries, it was all venous bleeding. With how many slashes and bites and gashes he had in him, a person could bleed out from that.
Yeah.
He did a really good job of slowing that down.
My biggest concerns were bear coming back, bleeding out, and going into shock. And so none of those happened, thankfully. We were on the phone for a little while longer. She's got the cavalry already showing up. They get the helicopter in the air, and it took about 2 hours from when I was attacked to when I was rescued, which is pretty remarkable, all things considered. Turns out I was about 900 yards or a little more or less from the road itself.
Okay.
So I'm on the phone with the 911 operator. I tell her, oh, I can see the helicopter. She's like, okay, give me directions to give them. And I was like, okay, if they stop exactly where they are now, turn to their 3 o'clock and fly that direction, they should fly almost right over me. And so
Yeah.
they did that. They flew over me, circled around, and then it took about maybe 5 minutes from when I saw the helicopter to when it spotted me. They were hovering over a clearing, and I was like, maybe I should just crawl to them. So I like started to crawl towards the helicopter, and then as I started that, I made it about 8 feet, and then I hear a ranger like yelling my name, and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
and so at that point, they just start working me, stuffing every hole with gauze, and just putting heating pads all over me, space blanket. They wrap me up in this device, take me up with the helicopter, and they bring me to the ambulance where I finally see Chloe.
I mean, I've engaged in your story quite a bit,
Hmm.
and it still always just gets to me. Just the number of things, the sequence of events. I mean, cellular signal in Greater Yellowstone. I've been traveling and exploring Yellowstone, Greater Yellowstone since I was a little kid. And the last 6 years, I've started mapping out the exact locations where I know I have cell service because
Nice.
it's such a rare thing to find sometimes.
Hmm.
So it is amazing that you were able to
Yeah.
get cell coverage just the perfect time. It's amazing that Chloe also had cell coverage and
Right.
that you guys were able to connect. I mean,
Hmm.
that's just wonderful. So glad
Yep.
that worked out. Last time we spoke, you said that this, and I think you mentioned it earlier, this was your first time in grizzly country was for this trip. And I bring that up. There are going to be people who have been traveling in grizzly country their entire lives and they've never been attacked. So they're going to think, oh, I'm doing everything right. They have to guard against that false sense of security, just like you did, right? Or
Hmm.
just like all of us do. We do need to focus on the variables we do have control over with the understanding that there are things that are just going to happen the way the universe decides they're going to happen. And
Yeah.
we just need to do our best to be prepared. What have you kind of learned from your experience? I mean, what's the message that you would most want to share with people?
Mostly just understand the risk you're taking in anything that you're choosing to do. Uh, every day we face risk, and it's not just pertaining to the bear safety. If you do choose to go into bear country, have your deterrence, have a layered protection. And that's a term I've learned from watching your videos. That's not something I knew prior to. I think you should always carry bear spray, even if you have a gun, even if you think you're the best shooter in the world, you should still have bear spray. I think the bear still deserves a chance to live as well. If you don't have a gun for layered protection, maybe have 2 cans of bear spray. Uh, my fear up there was very valid of the bear coming back, as Todd Orr knows more than anybody. And I felt extremely vulnerable up there alone with in that state.
I feel as though our decision making was a little. I didn't use the most common sense approaching that day. I got Shayne a Garmin InReach for his birthday, and we just kind of defaulted to. I had it on me. I think we just kind of defaulted to like, oh, the girl might need it more, and not thinking about the risk of, okay, what's the guy going off and doing, and the fact that my watch is also Garmin has incident detection in it, so if it senses sudden acceleration or deceleration, or likely being slammed into the ground by a bear, it's sending my coordinates to my emergency contacts. It would have been so much. I didn't need two devices that had the capability to send my coordinates accurately on me. I think that those are very valuable tools that we have in this day and age, and that should have been with Shayne, who was doing the more high risk activity of looking for wildlife to photograph just off the trail and the road and such, where he's more likely to run into a bear because he's trying to be quiet to photograph an animal. Although at that point you weren't trying to be quiet anymore. So yeah, I guess my big takeaway is to just think critically about what we choose to bring with us in our toolkit that day. For that matter, I feel education also kind of really came in handy. Both, Shayne's training in the army and, you know, I have my woofer. That was kind of what first got me into the medical field, and inspired me to get my EMT. But I think kind of knowing how to respond to an emergency really helped us, because I don't know if I would have had a framework for, okay, what do I do now? I might have just rushed into the woods trying to find him, instead of really thinking through, like, okay, what needs to happen so that he gets the help that he needs without me drawing resources away from him or getting myself into more trouble, or endangering others. So yeah, I feel like taking those classes like a WFA or WFR, or even a Stop the Bleed course, super, like, another thing you can add to your toolkit if you don't have it already.
I love this idea of education, 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 because it's not just going to magically come to you in when you're in crisis mode. You need to have that framework, like you guys said, where these are the next steps. This is how I get through this.
I truly believe that if people are going to be in a dangerous situation, like it's the internet battle of like the mistakes I made, he's off trail. He was alone. That was a risky choice. I don't think it was a mistake. You make your bed, you sleep in it. I will, all day long, the biggest mistake I made was not having my first aid kit with me and not having like a signaling device or something like that. Because normally we have radios with each other. So when we shed hunt, we separate from each other. We usually have anywhere between a quarter mile to a full mile between us. And we communicate through radio. We had the radios with us. Could have brought them. There's just so many things I could have brought with me that would have made the situation best. In hindsight, it's going to be 2020. But yeah, like if you choose to be alone, I think the one thing the good choice that we did make was make a hard time of 1 hour. Like, I'm going to be back in an hour. If I'm not back in 2, something bad happened,
establishing a do back time.
I think you guys are absolutely right. You need to look at bear safety as a toolkit and not some singular item. It's that full layered defense for preventing, responding, and then, of course, in your guys' case, you learned firsthand first aid after the fact. If you weren't able to prevent it, how do you then survive? So I think you're absolutely right. I mean, we've talked about it before, and you guys have brought up to me kind of your frustration with some of the coverage. It's so difficult sometimes to get accurate information about these kind of things. And that's, in fact, making bear safety really difficult for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Because there are people that take fragmented information, they kind of turn into Mother Goose and they weave their own narrative, right? And I'd like to give you guys the opportunity to kind of directly address some of those things and put the record straight.
Yeah. So essentially, as soon as, obviously the attack happened, the news, the national park would never give out personal information, anything like that. So they just said, 35-year-old male from Massachusetts. And here are some details, ongoing investigation. The fact that people concoct a entire, 10-minute plus video of that experience based off of literally cliff notes of the situation is just beyond me. It's one thing for the news to make a 2-minute video of just highlighting some stuff, but scary bear attacks misrepresented my story. They made a video just days after the attack where there was little to no information about the attack. I hadn't come out publicly that it was me in the situation. And I think that just does a disservice to the story itself and the educational benefit of the story, because you're just telling lies. And that's just, you should just wait to be patient and wait and have the facts of a story before you try telling it.
If you are a content creator who makes that kind of content, and either the victim of a situation like Shayne's, or the family of the victim comes to you and says, hey, this isn't necessarily factual, can we talk about it? You should listen. If you're benefiting off of other people's, telling stories about other people's worst days of their lives.
He literally doubled down and was like, these facts, I fact checked these facts and blah, blah. And I was like, you didn't, because my source is I was the guy. Your source is bullshit. So
isn't it funny how we all claim to have the facts on our side? Now, in the interest of fairness, Scary Bear Attacks has posted a comment claiming that they verified all the details of their video through Google. But that's exactly the point. Google and the internet generally are designed to give you what you ask for based on transitory metrics of engagement, not the accuracy of the information presented. And the reliability of the information presented is all over the map. Much of it is fragmented, dubious, or just demonstrably wrong. But you can turn the tables and help give truth the advantage by supporting responsible content like At Home in Wild Spaces. I look at, the internet as, it's an incredibly valuable tool when used responsibly, and so hazardous when used irresponsibly. And I take something like bear safety, right? There's an entertainment value that unfortunately is seized on so quickly and mistaken for reliable information. The only reason why I like the idea of addressing this stuff directly is because it has real world consequences, right?
Hmm.
This is about keeping people safe in the future. So sometimes we gotta pull out, we gotta turn off the nice switch, and we just gotta say it how it is. So
Yeah,
if something's wrong, it needs to be said. It's wrong,
absolutely. Yep.
right?
It's really difficult too when we're happy to have a conversation with people who have criticisms, valid criticisms about the risk management decisions that we made that day that might not have been the best decisions. But they were just the decisions that we made. We're happy to own those and talk about those and aim to educate people on what they could do better next time. It's the blatant lies of we're hearing all these crazy rumors of things that we allegedly did in the days leading up to the attack, and we're like, where are they getting this? We weren't even there in the park in the days leading up to the attack. So it was just really frustrating to watch how quickly that information spread.
And don't get me wrong, like, I care about animals. I love animals. I think almost every animal on this planet deserves its space. But there's just this type of group of people, and I don't know what really fuels their ambitions on just being so insanely cruel to people that just literally went through something terrible. It's a small number of people who tend to be, I call them the Bear 399 cult followers, and these people just made up absolute lies about the situation, assuming that we were like over a carcass, that I was asking for this. There was no carcass. I was nowhere near any carcass, and not for nothing, but more often than not, a sow with a cub is gonna avoid a carcass because she knows there's gonna be other bears there that are gonna be potentially dangerous to her cub. So more often than not, I know everything has an anomaly, but so just point that out.
I mean, it's always been this way with people, right? When there's a lack of information, this void, we want to fill it. And the internet has made it so that we can just fill it instantaneously. But most of the time we're filling it with mythology, fairy tale, half truths, and all those kind of things. I mean, when we're talking about human safety, and yes, even wildlife safety, like we need to be more responsible. We need to make sure that we get our information right. And for me personally, it's always hard because that takes time, right? It
Yeah.
takes time to get your facts right.
Yep.
And the internet's not always patient for that kind of stuff. So I
Yeah.
do appreciate that we have these opportunities and that you guys are participating in kind of clearing up the narrative and making sure that people get the facts. And then we can have a conversation about what we can learn,
Mhm.
from your guys' experience, because there's going to be the next Shayne who's going out into the woods, who's going to be in grizzly country. So I really appreciate you guys being willing to come on and have that conversation with me and help
Definitely.
everybody else benefit from it. I know that both of you recently returned to the Tetons,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I would love to hear about that experience. What was that like to go back to
man.
this place that now has such a part of is the site of such a critical part of your story?
It was very surreal. I can't say why, like, I can't say who put us there, but a TV network basically asked us if we would be willing to go film for this show and meet my rescuers. And so that's why we were there. We got to spend an extra day in Jackson, which is I was very grateful for. Because when you fly for network, they're just, you go there, you film, and then you leave. There's no playtime. So I was really thankful for that extra day.
I was
Did
reunited
you
with
get
the
the
can.
you got the bear can
Yeah.
back?
Yeah.
Awesome.
It's still
That's
covered in bear spray.
fantastic.
We got to learn how TV's made.
Yeah. And
I'm
all-
sure it'll look great.
all
Feels
the- yeah,
awkward
yeah.
if you're not involved in making that kind of.
The
production.
one thing that really bothered me is like when I approached the Rangers for the first time, the producer had them clap for me, and I'm like, dude, what?
That
They
It
saved
should've been
my
the other
life.
way around. Yeah, it was weird.
Yeah, it was super bizarre. The Rangers were all amazing. It really, I was really nervous about going back and having conversations with these people. I never really got closure with any of them on like who they think I am as a person. Did they think I'm an idiot? Are they mad that they had to do what they had to do? And so it was really incredible meeting them and had very genuine conversations, and they all applauded Chloe and my effort to keep me alive. And
I hope some of them see this, and I hope they just get us. I'll never not praise them, and will never not be thankful for a second chance at life. And it's not going to be lost on me, and I'm hopefully going to be able to do some good things for the world moving forward.
Really thankful for the opportunity from the television network that sent us out there, and so thankful to meet his rescuers. And it was just really nice to debrief, and kind of unpack what happened with the people who were there that day. And I feel like we've got closure on it now, and it's on to the next chapter.
And it was so validating too. Like they just really, told us like, no, everything y'all did was right. Like, don't let anyone take that away from you, because you're alive because of you and your wife. And then of course, because of them, but I had to stay alive for them to reach me. And so we did a lot of good things. And I think there's so much to be learned from this. So, I'm happy
Yeah.
that we got a chance to do it.
Yeah. And I think it's a great story because it's a team effort, right?
Mhm.
It's not just one, there's fortunate circumstances getting that cell coverage, the fact that you got your bear spray actually into your hand
Mhm.
and it was there where it needed to be when the bear bit down. I mean, those things, they happen because you guys had made certain decisions up to that point. I get a lot of people telling people should just stay out of bear country. It's their home.
Yeah.
And that looks really great on an internet chat, but it is a terrible idea. And the reason why is because without people like you who love and cherish wildlife, who love and cherish nature, without people out in nature to enjoy it and then to protect it, they don't have a home, right?
Yeah.
We have this shared stewardship of the earth. We need to know what's out there and what needs protecting and how to protect it. So, we just need to do it responsibly. I often, especially with how popular our national parks and public lands are, I think that our Park Service employees and our public lands employees, when there is an emergency, I think they deserve all the credit that you guys are giving them. So Shayne, Chloe, thanks a ton. You guys, I have this philosophy that people who have been through your experience, you guys are the gatekeepers. You know what it's like. It's not academic for you, like you've lived it. And there's
Yeah.
just so much that we can learn from you guys. And it's really up to people to decide to share their story and to be forthcoming and to be honest and candid about their experience. And I love that you guys have taken some life-saving lessons from your experience and you've shared them with other people. And I hope that we'll be able to do some good and help people stay safe in bear country and also help keep bears safe.
Thanks for giving us a place to tell our story. I'm really thankful for it.
Yeah, we really agree with your message here.
Yeah.
So thank you for
Yeah,
letting us
I
be a part of this.
really love your videos. I'm gonna be lifetime follower. You're doing great stuff. If you ever want to talk again, you got my number, and whatever we need to do, we're happy to help.
You guys are awesome. Thanks for coming on.
Likewise.
And thanks to the rest of you for joining us today. If you have any outstanding questions, then make sure and leave them in the comments below and let us know what you thought of today's discussion. And finally, if you want to help the facts and truth overcome the internet's disadvantages, then please consider joining our team on Patreon. It's not easy to make trustworthy content. It takes a lot of time and effort. By supporting At Home in Wild Spaces on Patreon, you are making a real difference and making sure that the facts have a fighting chance. Until next time, this is Mike, reminding you to seek truth in all aspects of your life, remembering that uncovering the truth isn't easy. It takes time, patience, and discipline, especially online.